The darkness of deep space stretched endlessly in all directions. Stars dotted the black canvas like tiny diamonds, cold and distant. Through this vast emptiness, a massive ship moved with purpose. The UN's Indomitable cut through the void, its hull gleaming under the light of distant suns. It was Earth's pride, humanity's first true battleship designed for deep space exploration and combat. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge, her dark eyes scanning the displays that surrounded her command chair. She was a woman in her early 40s with sharp features and black hair tied back in a regulation bun. 20 years of military service had carved confidence into her posture. Behind her, dozens of crew members worked at their stations, monitoring everything from engine output to long-range sensors. The Indomitable was enormous. It stretched nearly 2 kilometers from bow to stern, a design that combined brutal efficiency with Earth's engineering excellence. Its hull was layered with composite armor that could withstand impacts from micrometeorites and weapons fire. Along its sides, railgun batteries sat ready to fire slugs at tremendous speeds. The ship's fusion reactors hummed deep in its core, providing power that would have lit up a small city back on Earth. 800 souls called this vessel home. They were scientists, soldiers, engineers, and explorers. They represented 17 nations from Earth, unified under the United Earth Naval Service. For 6 months, they had been on a mission to map the unexplored regions beyond human space, pushing further than any human had gone before. Lieutenant Sarah Rodriguez sat at the communications station, her fingers moving across holographic controls. She was young, barely 25, but her skills had earned her a place on this historic mission. Suddenly, her screen flickered with an unexpected signal. She frowned, adjusting the filters. "Captain," she called out, her voice cutting through the steady hum of the bridge. "I'm picking up something strange." Vasquez turned her chair toward the communications station. "What kind of strange?" "It's encrypted, ma'am. But it's definitely artificial. Someone out here is broadcasting, and it's not us." Rodriguez's fingers danced across her console, trying to isolate the signal. "The pattern is consistent with the distress call." The bridge fell silent. Everyone knew what this meant. In 6 months of travel, they had found no signs of alien life. Earth had always wondered if humanity was alone in the universe. Now it seemed they had their answer. "Record everything," Vasquez ordered, standing from her chair. "And get Lieutenant Chen up here. I want our best linguistics AI on this immediately." The next 72 hours were intense. The Indomitable's crew worked around the clock to decode the message. Lieutenant James Chen, the ship's tactical officer and amateur linguist, barely slept. He fed the signal through every algorithm the ship's computer could run, searching for patterns, for meaning, for any clue about who had sent it. The breakthrough came on the 3rd day. Chen burst onto the bridge, exhaustion evident in his eyes but excitement in his voice. "Captain, we've got it. The AI cracked the basic structure. It's definitely a distress call." Vasquez leaned forward. "What does it say?" Chen pulled up the translation on the main view screen. The words appeared in English, though everyone knew they had been converted from something entirely alien. "To any who receive this message, we beg for assistance. The Valorian Confederacy is under siege. Our worlds burn. Our people die. The Kresh Dominion shows no mercy. 7 kingdoms cry out for salvation. If there is anyone in the darkness who can hear us, please, we need help." The bridge crew stared at the words. The message repeated over and over, an endless loop of desperation. "There's more," Chen continued, his fingers working across his tablet. "The signal contains massive data packets. Star charts, historical records, tactical information. Captain, they've essentially given us an encyclopedia of their civilization. I think they sent this to anyone who might find it, hoping someone would understand and respond." Over the following days, the crew of the Indomitable learned about a galaxy they never knew existed. The data painted a picture of thousands of alien species, organized into kingdoms, confederacies, and empires. Civilization had existed in this region of space for millions of years, far longer than humanity had walked upright on Earth. The Valorian Confederacy was an alliance of 7 alien kingdoms, each representing a different species. There were the Aelineth, tall beings with feathered crests and bird-like features. The Kryn were insectoid with compound eyes and 4 arms. The Druckle lived in water and resembled nothing Earth had ever produced. 4 other species completed the alliance, all united by common cause and ancient treaties. But the data also revealed something darker. The Kresh Dominion was an empire that had conquered half the known galaxy through overwhelming military force and ruthless tactics. They believed in the absolute right of the strong to dominate the weak. For the past 2 standard years, they had been systematically attacking Valorian space, world by world, system by system. The tactical data was what caught Chen's attention most. He studied the records of Kresh battles, their ship designs, their weapon systems. Everything felt wrong to his trained military mind. The aliens fought like medieval armies in space. They formed rigid battle lines. They relied on honor codes and predictable strategies. Their weapons were primarily energy-based, using focused beams and plasma weapons. "Captain, you need to see this," Chen said during one of their analysis sessions. He pulled up a 3-dimensional map of the Valorian home system. Red markers indicated Kresh ships. There were thousands of them, forming a complete blockade around the primary planet. "This is the current situation according to the last data update in the message. That was sent 40 days ago." Vasquez studied the tactical display with a critical eye. "How many ships are we looking at?" "Approximately 3,000 Kresh vessels, various classes. Their largest are about half our size. They use crystalline power cores and energy shields. Standard galactic technology, according to the database." Commander Sarah Mitchell, the ship's executive officer, stepped closer to the display. She was a tall woman with red hair and a cautious nature. "Captain, we need to discuss this carefully. First contact protocols are clear. We observe, we document, but we don't interfere in alien conflicts." Vasquez crossed her arms. "Those protocols were written assuming we'd find peaceful civilizations, or at least stable ones. This is genocide, Sarah. We're watching an entire species alliance cry out for help." "With respect, ma'am, it's not our fight," Mitchell replied. "We have 800 people on this ship. Our mission is exploration, not military intervention in alien wars." The debate raged for hours in the captain's ready room. The senior staff was divided. Some argued for caution, for returning to Earth and letting proper authorities decide. Others felt a moral obligation to respond to the distress call. They were humans, and humans helped those in need. Dr. Amara Okonkwo, the ship's chief medical officer, spoke up during a tense moment. "I've been reading their medical records, their cultural files. These aren't monsters or aliens we can't understand. They have families. They write poetry. They create art. The Elenith have a festival celebrating their children that sounds remarkably like Earth's various coming-of-age ceremonies. They're people, Captain. Different from us, yes, but people nonetheless." Vasquez listened to every argument, every concern, every hope. She walked to the window of her ready room and stared out at the stars. Command was lonely. The decision was hers alone, and she would bear the responsibility regardless of the outcome. Finally, she turned back to her officers. "We didn't come out here just to look at stars and take pictures. The United Earth Naval Service exists to protect and serve. That's our oath. It doesn't specify protecting only humans. We're going to the Valorian system. We're going to answer their call." Mitchell shook her head but said nothing more. She would follow orders even if she disagreed. "Lieutenant Chen," Vasquez continued, "I want full tactical analysis of Kresh capabilities. Find their weaknesses. We're one ship against 3,000. We need every advantage." "Yes, ma'am," Chen replied, a slight smile crossing his tired face. The Indomitable changed course. Its powerful engines burned bright as it accelerated toward coordinates 60 light-years away. The crew prepared for what might be humanity's first real battle in space. Engineers checked every system twice. Gunners ran simulations on the railgun batteries. Marines practiced boarding procedures. Medical bays were cleared and prepped for potential casualties. In the cargo holds, Lieutenant Rodriguez led a team preparing something special. They were loading the ship's communication arrays with a message of their own, ready to broadcast in multiple alien languages. It was simple and direct. "Humanity has received your call. We are coming." The journey took 3 weeks at maximum sustainable speed. During that time, the crew trained relentlessly. Chen drilled them on alien ship recognition. Dr. Okonkwo studied alien biology, trying to understand how to treat wounded Valorians if needed. The weapons teams practiced firing solutions against multiple targets. Vasquez barely slept. She reviewed the tactical data over and over, searching for an edge. The Kresh had numbers and experience. They had been fighting wars for thousands of years, but they had never fought humans before. That unfamiliarity was the only advantage she could find. On the final day before arrival, Vasquez addressed the entire crew over the ship's internal communications. Her face appeared on every screen. Her voice carried to every corner of the Indomitable. "We're about to do something that's never been done before," she began. "We're going to make first contact with an alien civilization. But we're not going as conquerors or tourists. We're going as defenders. Someone asked for help and we answered. That's what makes us human. That's what makes us worthy of traveling among the stars." She paused, looking directly into the camera. "I won't lie to you. The odds are not in our favor. We're outnumbered thousands to one, but we have something they don't. We have courage. We have ingenuity. And we have each other. Whatever happens in the next few hours, I'm proud to serve with every single one of you." The ship emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Valorian system. Immediately, sensors began painting a picture of the situation. It was worse than the old data had suggested. The Kresh blockade had grown. Nearly 4,000 ships now surrounded the primary planet, and the scars of orbital bombardment were visible even from this distance. "Multiple contacts," Rodriguez reported, her voice tight with tension. "They've detected us. We're being scanned." Chen worked his tactical display rapidly. "Captain, they're repositioning. Looks like a standard intercept formation. They think we're another Valorian ship." "Let them think that for now," Vasquez said calmly. She settled into her command chair and gripped the armrests. "Charge all weapons. Raise shields." And Rodriguez broadcast our message. "Let both sides know who we are." The transmission went out on all frequencies in multiple languages. "This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the United Earth Naval Service ship Indomitable. We have received the Valorian distress call. We are here to render assistance." For a long moment there was silence. Then the communications board lit up like a Christmas tree. Dozens of signals came in at once, some from the Kresh fleet, some from the planet below. One signal dominated the others. It came from the largest Kresh vessel, a massive dreadnought that dwarfed the ships around it. The translation came through with an undertone of amusement. "Unknown vessel, this is Admiral Crusade of the Dominion Fleet. You have entered a designated combat zone. The Valorian Confederacy has been judged and found wanting. Their resistance ends today. You will depart immediately, or you will be destroyed alongside them. You have one standard cycle to comply." Vasquez allowed herself a cold smile. "Open a channel, Rodriguez." When the link was established, she spoke with absolute clarity. "Admiral Crusade, this is Captain Vasquez. We received a distress call. We came to help. Stand down your forces and withdraw from this system, or we will make you stand down. This is your only warning." The response came back quickly, and this time the amusement was replaced with disbelief. "You are one ship, one. I command 4,000 vessels. My fleet has crushed empires older than your species. You dare threaten me?" "I don't threaten," Vasquez replied. "I promise. You have 1 hour to withdraw. After that, we consider you hostile. Indomitable out." She closed the channel and looked at her crew. Every eye was on her. "Well," she said with a slight grin, "now they know we're here. Helm, take us in. All hands to battle stations. Let's show them what happens when humans answer a call for help." The Indomitable's engines flared bright, and the massive battleship accelerated toward the Kresh fleet. Behind the captain, Chen pulled up the firing solutions for the railgun batteries. In engineering, the fusion reactors ramped up to maximum output. Throughout the ship, 800 humans prepared for battle. In the distance, the Kresh fleet began to move, forming attack formations. They had fought countless battles and destroyed countless foes. They had no reason to fear one strange ship from an unknown species. They would learn differently very soon. The Kresh fleet moved with practiced precision. 4,000 warships adjusted their positions, creating interlocking fields of fire. They had perfected this formation over centuries of conquest. Admiral Crusade watched from his command throne aboard the dreadnought Eternal Dominance. His 3 eyes focused on the tactical display. The strange alien vessel continued its approach, apparently unaware of its impending destruction. Crusade was an imposing figure, even by his species standards. His exoskeleton gleamed with ceremonial markings that denoted dozens of conquered worlds. His mandibles clicked together in what passed for a smile among his kind. This would be over quickly, and then the Valorian problem would be resolved. The last pocket of resistance would finally break. Communications, did they actually threaten us? One of his subordinates asked, disbelief evident in his chittering voice. "They did," Crusade replied. unusual. Most species beg or flee when they see our fleet strength. This one seems to suffer from ignorance. We shall educate them. He gestured with one of his forearms. When they enter optimal range, frigate wings 1 through 5 will open fire. Use standard suppression patterns. I want their ship disabled, not destroyed. I am curious about this species. On the Indomitable, Lieutenant Chen watched the Kresh fleet movements with intense focus. His console displayed threat assessments, firing solutions, and predicted enemy tactics. Everything he saw confirmed what he had learned from the Valorian data files. The Kresh fought like they had read from a textbook and never deviated from the script. "Captain, they're forming a standard envelope pattern," he reported. 5 wings of frigates moving to forward positions. Looks like they want to disable us with their energy weapons, probably for capture and study. Vasquez nodded slowly. How long until we're in their optimal firing range? 2 minutes at current speed. And how long until we're in our optimal range? Chen allowed himself a small smile. 90 seconds. The fundamental difference between human and galactic warfare was about to become very clear. The galaxy had fought with energy weapons for so long that they had forgotten the elegance of kinetic solutions. Humanity had never stopped refining the art of throwing objects at tremendous velocities. "All railgun batteries," Vasquez commanded, her voice calm and steady. "Target the frigate formations. Prepare full spread. Fire on my command." The Indomitable's railgun batteries were marvels of human engineering. Each barrel used electromagnetic acceleration to launch solid slugs at a significant fraction of light speed. There were no energy signatures to detect, no warming up period, just instant devastating kinetic force. The Kresh frigates moved into position, their energy weapon arrays beginning to glow with accumulated power. They were beautiful ships in their own way, with crystalline structures that caught and reflected the light of the system's star. Each was about 300 meters long, crewed by 50 Kresh warriors. Their shields were designed to deflect or absorb energy weapons. They had never encountered pure kinetic weapons before. 30 seconds to their optimal range, Chen counted down. Vasquez leaned forward in her chair. "Weapons free! Fire!" The Indomitable shuddered as dozens of railgun batteries fired simultaneously. The slugs were simple iron-titanium alloy, no more complex than bullets fired from ancient rifles on Earth. But they were traveling at nearly 1,000 kilometers per second. At that velocity, even a small object carried tremendous energy. The Kresh frigates detected the launches, but their threat assessment systems dismissed them. Simple projectiles were no danger to shielded vessels. Their shields could stop energy beams that would vaporize metal. Surely simple chunks of metal posed no threat. They were catastrophically wrong. The first slug hit a Kresh frigate amidships. The shield tried to stop it, but kinetic energy was different from energy beams. The slug punched through the shield like it was not there. Then through the crystalline hull, then completely through the ship. The frigate exploded from the inside as the slug's passage turned everything it touched into superheated plasma. Before the Kresh could even process what had happened, dozens more impacts followed. Frigates shattered. Their beautiful crystalline hulls cracked and burst. Crew compartments were exposed to vacuum. Ships that had conquered a dozen worlds died in seconds, torn apart by weapons their technology had no answer for. On the Eternal Dominance, Admiral Kresh Tar stood from his throne in shock. His tactical display showed carnage. In less than 10 seconds, 40 frigates had been destroyed. 40 ships, hundreds of warriors gone. What kind of weapons are those? His tactical officer chittered in panic. "Kinetic projectiles," the sensor specialist replied, disbelief in his voice.
"Simple metal traveling at extreme velocity."
"Our shields are calibrated for energy weapons. They offer minimal protection against solid matter at those speeds." Kresh Tar's mandibles ground together in fury. No one had used pure kinetic weapons in modern galactic warfare for thousands of years. They were considered primitive, inefficient. Yet here they were, proving devastatingly effective. He had underestimated this unknown species. That mistake had cost him 40 ships. He would not make it again. "All ships," he commanded. "Engage at maximum range. Use dispersed formation. Do not cluster. Battlecruiser wings advance and fire at will." The Kresh fleet began to react, but their doctrine was fighting against them. They were trained for energy weapon duels at close range, for honor combat and traditional tactics. Adapting to this new threat was not immediate. The Indomitable did not give them time to adapt. Vasquez had no intention of fighting fairly. Fair fights were for sports and duels. This was war, and in war you used every advantage. Helm evasive pattern Delta 3, she ordered. Keep us moving. Chen continuous fire, prioritize larger vessels, and launch our drones. The ship lurched into a complex movement pattern, no longer flying straight but weaving through space in unpredictable directions. The Crash energy weapons were powerful, but they needed to target their enemy. Against a vessel moving erratically and at high speed, their accuracy dropped significantly. Meanwhile, the Indomitable's hangar bays opened. Dozens of combat drones poured out, each no larger than a fighter jet. They were unmanned, controlled by the ship's AI, and they carried their own railgun systems. They spread out in a swarm pattern, adding their firepower to the main ship's batteries. Chen worked his console like a musician playing an instrument. Each target was carefully selected. Battlecruisers, cruisers, support vessels. The railguns fired again and again, each shot precisely calculated. The drones harassed the smaller Crash ships, forcing them to break formation or die. Drone Group 3, focus on that cruiser cluster. Main batteries target the battlecruiser at coordinates Mark 7, Chen called out. His hands moved constantly, adjusting targeting solutions, compensating for Crash movements, ensuring maximum efficiency. The Crash began to land hits on the Indomitable. Energy beams struck the hull, scorching armor, burning through outer layers. But the human ship was built tough. Its armor was layered, designed to ablate and disperse heat. Damage reports came in, but nothing critical. The ship could take punishment. What the Crash could not handle was the return fire. Every railgun hit was catastrophic. The kinetic energy did not just penetrate hulls. It transferred momentum, spinning ships, breaking formations. The Crash crews had trained for energy weapon battles where shields would absorb hits until they failed. They had no training for what happened when a solid slug traveling at relativistic speeds hit your ship. The battle spread across thousands of kilometers. The Indomitable moved like a dancer, never in one place long enough for the Crash to concentrate fire. Its railguns spoke with mechanical precision, and each time they spoke, a Crash ship died or was crippled. Admiral Kreshtar watched his fleet being dismantled and felt something he had not experienced in decades. Fear. This single ship was destroying his forces. Hundreds of vessels were already gone. The tactical display showed wreckage spreading across the combat zone. And still the human ship fought. How many ships have we destroyed? He demanded. None, Admiral. His tactical officer replied, voice trembling. We have scored numerous hits, but their armor holds. Our energy weapons are not penetrating to vital systems. Kreshtar's rage built. This was impossible. One ship could not defeat 4,000. The mathematics did not allow it. Yet here it was happening. He made a decision born of desperation. All ships ramming speed. If we cannot destroy them at range, we will overwhelm them in close combat. Every ship converge on the human vessel. Crush them with our numbers. It was a tactic born of desperation, not strategy. But the Crash obeyed. 3,600 remaining ships turned and accelerated toward the Indomitable. They abandoned formation, abandoned tactics, and simply charged. On the Indomitable's bridge, alarms blared as sensors detected the massive coordinated movement. Chen looked at his display and felt his stomach drop. Captain, they're all coming at us. Full advance, all ships. Vasquez studied the tactical situation for exactly 3 seconds. Then she smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. They're giving us stationary targets moving in predictable patterns. How generous. Chen, you have full weapons authorization. Fire at will, all batteries maximum rate. Don't stop shooting until they do. The Indomitable's railguns began firing in a continuous barrage. The ship's AI calculated firing solutions faster than any human could. Every second, dozens of slugs launched into space, each one aimed at a Crash vessel. The drones added their own fire, targeting the smaller ships. The space between the human ship and the Crash fleet became a wall of death. Slugs crossed the distance in seconds. Ships exploded. Debris spread across the battlefield, and that debris became hazards for following ships. Crash vessels collided with the wreckage of their comrades. Others were torn apart before they got close. The Crash charged with courage, but courage was not enough against mathematics and physics. They were flying straight at an enemy that could kill them from thousands of kilometers away. Every second they advanced, dozens more died. But some got through. The sheer weight of numbers meant that eventually, Crash ships reached close range. They opened fire with everything they had. The Indomitable shook under the concentrated assault. Energy beams cut deep into armor. Systems began to fail. Fire broke out in 3 sections. Casualties were reported from the impact points. "Hull breach on Deck 7, Commander Mitchell reported, her voice steady despite the chaos. "Sealing bulkheads. Damage control teams responding." "Railgun Battery 4 is offline," Chen added. "Battery 7 reporting reduced capacity." Vasquez gripped her armrests. "Keep firing. All remaining batteries, continuous operation. We just need to outlast them," and they did. The crash charge broke against the Indomitable like waves against a cliff. Ships got close enough to ram, but found that ramming a 2-kilometer battleship did minimal damage, while suicidal crash crews died in the attempt. Others got close enough for brief exchanges before being torn apart by point defense railguns. The battle lasted 3 hours. 3 hours of continuous combat, of relentless violence, of human determination against alien numbers. When it finally ended, the space around the Indomitable was filled with debris. Crash ships, or what remained of them, drifted in pieces. Emergency beacons cried out from damaged vessels. The once mighty blockade fleet was shattered. Of the 4,000 crash ships that had started the battle, fewer than 400 remained combat-capable. And those 400 were in full retreat, jumping to faster-than-light speeds and fleeing the system. Admiral Kreshtar was not among them. His dreadnought, the Eternal Dominance, had tried to close with the Indomitable personally. A spread of railgun fire had torn through its bridge. The Admiral and his senior staff were dead. On the Indomitable, exhausted crew members slumped at their stations. The ship looked like it had been through hell because it had. Scorch marks covered the hull. Several sections were exposed to space. 16 crew members were dead, with dozens more injured. But the ship still functioned, and more importantly, it had won. Vasquez stood on her bridge, looking at the tactical display that showed the Kresh retreat. She felt no triumph, only exhaustion and sadness for the lives lost on both sides. But the Valorian system was free. The blockade was broken. "Captain," Rodriguez called out, her voice trembling with emotion. "We're receiving transmissions from the planet." Dozens of them. "They're all saying the same thing." "What are they saying, Lieutenant?" Rodriguez looked up, tears in her eyes. "Thank you. They're saying thank you, and they're begging us not to leave." "Captain, they want to meet us." Vasquez nodded slowly. "Tell them we would be honored to meet them. Arrange for their envoys to come aboard when it's safe. And Rodriguez, send a message back to Earth. Tell them we've made first contact, and it's everything we hoped it would be and nothing like we expected." She turned to look at her crew, these brave humans who had just fought impossible odds and won. "All hands, this is the captain. Stand down from combat stations. Damage control teams begin repairs. Medical, tend to the wounded. Everyone else get some rest. You've earned it. We've just won humanity's first battle in space, and you should all be proud." As the crew began the long process of recovery and repair, Vasquez walked to the observation window and looked out at the planet below. Somewhere down there, 7 alien species were celebrating their freedom. Humanity had answered their call. Now came the harder part, figuring out what came next. The shuttle from Valorian Prime approached the Indomitable slowly, its crystalline hull catching the light of the system's star. It was beautiful in a way that human ships were not, all flowing curves and organic shapes. Inside the Indomitable's main hangar bay, Captain Vasquez stood with an honor guard of 20 Marines. They wore dress uniforms rather than combat gear, but everyone was aware of the sidearms each carried. First contact was historic, but caution was still wise. The shuttle landed with barely a whisper. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, a ramp extended from its side, and the first aliens to officially meet humanity descended to the deck. There were 7 of them, one representative from each of the kingdoms that formed the Valorian Confederacy. They walked with careful dignity, their movements showing both nervousness and determination. At the front was an Elanith, the avian species that Vasquez had seen in the database files. She was tall, perhaps 7 feet, with feathers that shimmered between blue and silver. Her eyes were large and intelligent, and she wore robes that seemed to be woven from light itself. The 7 aliens approached Vasquez and her honor guard. Then, without warning, they all knelt. Not just bowed, but fully knelt, pressing their foreheads to the deck of the hangar bay. The gesture was clearly one of complete submission. Vasquez felt uncomfortable immediately. She glanced at Commander Mitchell, who looked equally uncertain. This was not the meeting between equals they had hoped for. "Please," Vasquez said, stepping forward. "Please stand. You don't need to kneel. The alienith looked up, her large eyes showing confusion. She spoke, and the translation device she wore rendered her words into English. But you are our saviors. You are the warriors who broke the unbreakable fleet. Kneeling is the traditional gesture of supplication and gratitude to those who save our lives. In my culture, Vasquez replied gently, equals stand together. You called for help. We answered. That makes us allies, not masters and servants. Please stand and talk with us as equals. Slowly, uncertainly, the 7 aliens rose to their feet. The Ilanith studied Vasquez with those large eyes, and something like respect flickered in them. I am Princess Talia of the Ilanith Kingdom. I speak for the Valorian Confederacy. Your words honor us, Captain Vasquez. We are not accustomed to such respect from those with power. Over the next hours, the two groups began the careful process of understanding each other. They moved to a conference room where the aliens were offered food and drink. The translators worked overtime, adjusting to accents and idioms. Slowly, a picture of the galactic situation emerged. Princess Talia explained that the galaxy had been organized into kingdoms and empires for as long as anyone could remember. Technology had reached a plateau millions of years ago. Ships used crystalline power cores and energy weapons. Tactics were formalized and ritualized. Wars were fought according to ancient rules. And throughout it all, a rigid caste system dominated every civilization. Only those of royal blood receive full education, Talia explained, her feathers rustling with what seemed to be shame. Commoners are taught their trades and nothing more. It has been this way for so long that most accept it as natural. The Kresh Dominion takes this to an extreme. They believe that the strong have the absolute right to rule, and the weak exist only to serve. Lieutenant Chen, who had joined the meeting as tactical advisor, leaned forward. How many people in your kingdoms are considered commoners? Perhaps 90% of our population, replied one of the other aliens, a Kryn whose translation device gave his voice a buzzing quality. The royal families are small, but they control all knowledge, all advanced technology, all decisions of importance. Chen exchanged glances with Vasquez. Both were thinking the same thing. An entire civilization that wasted 90% of its population's potential was not just immoral, it was inefficient. No wonder their technology had stagnated. But Vasquez kept her thoughts to herself for now. Instead, she asked the question that mattered most. The Kresh fleet we defeated was their blockade force. What comes next? Talia's feathers drooped, a gesture that clearly indicated sadness or fear. The main fleet. Admiral Kreshitar commanded only a fraction of the Dominion's military power. They have been at war for centuries, conquering system after system. Their emperor commands 100,000 ships. When word of this defeat reaches him, he will come himself, and he will bring overwhelming force. The room fell silent. 100,000 ships. Even after their victory, everyone knew the Indomitable could not stand against those numbers. The ship was damaged, systems were strained, and they had expended 30% of their railgun ammunition. Against 100,000 ships, they would be overwhelmed in minutes. How long do we have? Vasquez asked quietly. 6 weeks, perhaps 7, Talia replied. The Dominion capital is 40 light years from here. They will need time to gather the fleet and travel, but they will come, Captain. And when they do, we will all die. Unless? She hesitated. Unless what? Unless you teach us to fight as you fight. Unless you share your knowledge, your tactics, your way of war. We have numbers, 7 kingdoms, billions of people, but we fight like our ancestors fought 1,000,000 years ago. You fight like every battle is new. Teach us, and perhaps together we can survive. Vasquez looked at her senior staff. This was beyond first contact now. This was being asked to fundamentally change an alien civilization's approach to warfare and potentially their entire social structure. Commander Mitchell was shaking her head slightly, cautioning against such deep involvement. But Dr. Okonkwo was nodding, and Chen looked eager. I need to discuss this with my crew, Vasquez said finally. What you're asking for is significant, but I promise you this, we didn't come here to watch you die. We'll find a way. After the aliens returned to their shuttle and departed, Vasquez called a senior staff meeting. The debate was intense and immediate. We can't rebuild their entire civilization in 6 weeks, Mitchell argued. Even if we wanted to, it's impossible. We should call for reinforcements from Earth and hope they arrive in time. Reinforcements are 2 months away at minimum, Chen countered. By the time they get here, the battle will be over. If we're going to help the Valorians, we have to do it now with what we have. What about the Prime Directive or non-interference or any of the principles we're supposed to follow? Mitchell demanded. We're talking about fundamentally altering alien societies. They asked us for help, Dr. Okonkwo said quietly. They're asking us to teach them, not rule them. There's a difference, and besides, what kind of people would we be if we said no? If we just watched them die because helping would be inconvenient or complicated? The debate went on for hours. Vasquez listened to every argument, every concern, every hope. Finally, she made her decision. We're going to help them, but we're going to do it right. We're not going to impose our system on them. We're going to teach them principles, tactics, technologies. What they do with that knowledge is their choice. Chen, you're in charge of military training. Take volunteers from the crew and spread them across the 7 kingdoms. Teach their people how to fight asymmetrically, how to think tactically. She turned to the chief engineer, Lieutenant Marcus Webb. Webb, you're going to teach them manufacturing. Not our fusion technology, but the basics. How to forge better weapons, how to use resources efficiently. Keep it simple enough that they can implement it quickly. What about me? Mitchell asked, still skeptical but willing to follow orders. You're going to work with their governments. Help them coordinate. The 7 kingdoms need to function as a single military force, not as separate entities. That's going to be the hardest job of all because it means convincing royalty to share power. Over the next days, the plan began to take shape. Teams from the Indomitable spread across Valorian space. Chen took a group of 20 Marines and tactical officers to begin training programs. They started with the basics: small unit tactics, guerrilla warfare, the principle of asymmetric combat. The Valorian military was structured like a medieval army. Nobles commanded from the rear while common soldiers formed ranks and marched to battle. Their space tactics were similar, with grand fleets meeting in formal battle. Chen immediately began breaking down those structures. War isn't about honor, he told a group of Aelenith officers in one of his first training sessions. War is about winning with minimum casualties to your side. You don't fight fair. You fight smart. You use every advantage. You hit the enemy where they're weak and avoid where they're strong. The alien officers looked shocked. But the honor codes, one protested. The rules of warfare that have existed for thousands of years. The Kresh are butchering your people, Chen replied bluntly. Are they following honor codes? Rules only work when everyone agrees to them. The Kresh want to destroy you. You need to decide what matters more, your honor codes or your survival. It was harsh, but it was true. Slowly, the Valorian officers began to understand. Chen taught them about ambush tactics, about hit-and-run attacks, about using terrain and mobility as weapons. He taught them that a small force with surprise could defeat a larger force that was unprepared. Meanwhile, on Valorian Prime, something unexpected was happening. Chen had requested instructors and the royal families had sent their trained soldiers. But word had spread among the common people about the humans and their strange ideas. Commoners began showing up to the training grounds asking to learn. The nobles were appalled. Training commoners in warfare was against tradition, but Chen saw opportunity. He began secretly running night training sessions for any Valorian who wanted to learn, regardless of caste. The common people learned quickly. They had spent their lives being told they were inferior, but the humans treated them as equals. The effect was revolutionary. Vasquez learned about Chen's unauthorized commoner training when Princess Talia visited the Indomitable in a fury. Your officer is destroying our social order, she said, her feathers ruffled in agitation. He's teaching commoners to fight. He's giving them ideas above their station. This is causing chaos. Vasquez listened carefully, then asked a simple question. Princess, in 6 weeks, the Kresh Emperor arrives with 100,000 ships. Do you want to face him with only your royal warriors? Or do you want every capable person in your kingdoms fighting for survival? Talia opened her beak to respond, then closed it. The question hung in the air. Finally, she said quietly, "It goes against everything we've ever known." "I know," Vasquez replied. "But sometimes survival requires change. The Kresh are coming because they think you're weak. They think you'll follow your old patterns and be easy to defeat. Prove them wrong. Let your people surprise them." Talia was silent for a long time. Then she made a decision that would echo through Valorian history. "I will speak with the other royal families. If we are to die, let it be trying something new rather than repeating old failures." The transformation of Valorian space over the next weeks was remarkable. The Seven Kingdoms began working together in ways they never had before. Commoners who had never been allowed to think for themselves suddenly found humans encouraging their ideas. Manufacturing facilities that had made the same products for centuries began producing new weapons based on simple human designs. They couldn't build railguns. The technology was too complex and time-consuming. But they could build better armor, better missiles, better defensive systems. They could mine asteroids for raw materials and forge weapons at a pace their ancestors would have thought impossible. Chen organized the Valorian fleets into new formations. Instead of rigid battle lines, he taught them fluid tactics. Hit and run. Ambush from multiple angles. Sacrifice space for time. Make the enemy pay for every meter they advance. But the most important change was psychological. The Valorian people, both nobles and commoners, began to believe they could win. The humans had given them something more valuable than weapons or tactics. They had given them hope and the knowledge that they were not helpless. As the 6th week approached, Lieutenant Rodriguez picked up long-range sensor readings. Her face went pale as she processed the data. She called Captain Vasquez to the bridge immediately. "Captain, we've detected multiple FTL signatures at the edge of sensor range. Lots of them. Dozens of different vectors all converging on this system." Vasquez felt her stomach sink. "The Kresh main fleet." "Yes, ma'am. But that's not all. I'm also detecting 4 other signatures, different FTL patterns. They're coming from the direction of Earth." The bridge fell silent. Vasquez stared at the sensor display, not daring to hope. "Can you identify them?" Rodriguez worked her console frantically, then looked up with tears in her eyes. "It's the cavalry, Captain. 4 Earth ships, 3 more battleships, and a fleet carrier. Earth sent reinforcements." The entire bridge erupted in cheers, but Vasquez kept her eyes on the sensor display. 4 ships plus the damaged Indomitable against 100,000 Kresh vessels. The odds were still impossible, but at least they would not face it alone. "When will the Earth ships arrive?" she asked. 7 weeks, ma'am. They're pushing maximum speed, but they're still too far out." 7 weeks. The Kresh would arrive in days. The Earth reinforcements would arrive 7 weeks later, long after the battle was decided. Vasquez felt the weight of command crushing down on her shoulders. They had taught the Valorians well, but it would not be enough. Not against those numbers. "Captain," Chen said quietly, "we've bought the Valorians 6 weeks of preparation time. They're not the same people who sent that distress call. We've changed them. Maybe that's enough." Vasquez looked at her tactical officer and managed a tired smile. "Maybe, Lieutenant, maybe." But inside she wondered if any amount of change could prepare them for what was coming. The Kresh Dominion fleet arrived like a descending nightmare. One moment, the space at the edge of the Valorian system was empty. The next it was filled with thousands upon thousands of warships. They came in waves, dropping out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. The sensor displays on the Indomitable lit up with so many contacts that they overlaid each other in a sea of red. Captain Vasquez stood on her bridge, staring at the tactical display with a blank expression. In 20 years of military service, she had never seen anything like this. The Kresh Emperor had brought his full might. 100,000 warships ranging from frigates to massive dreadnoughts. And at the center of it all was a ship so large it defied belief. "Captain," Lieutenant Chen said, his voice barely above a whisper. "The flagship. Its reading is approximately 800 kilometers in diameter. It's not a ship. It's a small moon." The Emperor's flagship, the Eternal Throne, was indeed the size of a moon. It had been built over centuries, layer upon layer of weapons and armor and power cores. It had conquered 100 worlds. No force had ever stood against it and survived. The Emperor himself commanded from its throne room, a being who had ruled for 2 centuries and never known defeat. On the bridge of the Eternal Throne, Emperor Vexilon studied the sensor reports with growing anger. His body was ancient by Kresh standards, kept alive through technology and sheer will. His exoskeleton bore scars from 1,000 battles, and his 6 eyes gleamed with calculated cruelty. "This is the system where Admiral Kreshitar died?" he asked, his voice a deep rumble that made his subordinates flinch. "Yes, Emperor," his second-in-command replied carefully. "A single alien vessel destroyed nearly 4,000 of our ships. The survivors fled rather than face it. Cowards," Vexilon hissed. "They should have died fighting. But no matter. We are here now, and we have brought the full might of the Dominion. These aliens, these humans, will learn what happens when they dare to interfere with our conquest. We will crush them. We will burn their homeworld to ashes, and we will make an example of the Valorians that will echo through the galaxy for 1,000 years." He gestured to his communications officer. "Broadcast on all frequencies. I want both the humans and the Valorians to hear this." The message went out, translated into every language known to galactic civilization. Emperor Vexilon's voice echoed across the system. "Valorian Confederacy, your resistance ends today. You called for help and help came, but now your saviors will die with you. Humans, you have interfered in matters beyond your understanding. You destroyed one of my fleets, and for that your species will be erased from existence. You have one standard cycle to surrender yourselves. After that, we will show no mercy." On the Indomitable, the crew listened to the message in silence. Then Rodriguez looked at Vasquez. "Should we respond, Captain?" Vasquez considered for a moment, then shook her head. "No, he already knows our answer. All ships begin defensive operations. Execute Plan Delta 7. Let's show the Emperor what desperation looks like." Over the past 6 weeks, the Valorians and the humans had prepared for this moment. They knew they could not win a conventional battle, so they had decided not to fight one. The Valorian system became a trap, with layers upon layers of defenses and surprise. The Kresh fleet advanced with confidence. They expected resistance, but they also expected victory. What they found instead was a nightmare of asymmetric warfare that violated every principle of galactic combat doctrine. The first wave of Kresh ships entered the outer system and immediately encountered problems. The Valorians had mined the asteroid belt, not with sophisticated weapons but with simple explosives attached to rocks. When Kresh ships passed through what appeared to be normal asteroid clusters, the rocks detonated. The explosions were not powerful enough to destroy ships, but they damaged shields and sensors. And more importantly, they created chaos. Chen watched from his station as the Kresh formation began to fragment. "They're slowing down, trying to clear the mines. Good. Every hour we delay them is an hour closer to our reinforcements arriving." But the Kresh were learning. They adapted, sending expendable frigates ahead to trigger the mines. The fleet continued its advance, slower but steady. They reached the middle system where the gas giant orbited, and there they encountered the second surprise. Hidden in the gas giant storms were hundreds of small Valorian ships, each crewed by volunteers. When the Kresh fleet passed, these ships emerged and attacked from behind. They were no match for Kresh warships in direct combat, but they were not trying to fight directly. They targeted engines, communication arrays, supply ships. Then they dove back into the gas giant storms where the larger Kresh vessels could not follow. It was guerrilla warfare in space, and it infuriated Emperor Vexilon. "These tactics are dishonorable," he raged at his commanders. "They hide like cowards and strike from ambush. This is not warfare. This is terrorism." "Yes, Emperor," his second-in-command agreed carefully, "but it is also effective. We have lost over 2,000 ships to these tactics, and we have not yet reached the primary planet. Should we adjust our approach?" "No," Vexilon said firmly. "We advance. Let them have their small victories. When we reach their homeworld, we will show them what real power looks like." The Kresh fleet continued forward, and the Valorian defenders continued to bleed them. Every kilometer cost the Dominion ships in time. The inner system became a battlefield of small actions, of ambushes and traps, of sacrifice and determination. On Valorian Prime, Princess Talia coordinated the defense from a command center that had been built using human organizational principles. Around her, nobles and commoners worked side by side, monitoring fleet movements, directing resources, adapting strategies. The old caste system had not disappeared, but it had been forced to acknowledge that survival mattered more than tradition. "The Kresh will reach orbital space within 12 hours, reported a Kryn tactical officer, who 6 weeks ago would never have been allowed in a command center. Our outer defenses have inflicted approximately 10,000 casualties on their fleet, but they still outnumber us dramatically. Talia studied the tactical display with eyes that had learned to see warfare differently. The humans had taught her that numbers were not everything. Morale mattered, strategy mattered, and most importantly, the willingness to sacrifice mattered. "Execute the evacuation plan," she ordered. "All non-combatants to the underground shelters. All defense platforms to maximum readiness. And send a message to Captain Vasquez. Tell her it has been an honor." On the Indomitable, Vasquez received the message. Her ship was positioned near the planet, the last line of defense. Around her were 3,000 Valorian warships, every vessel the Confederacy could gather. Against 90,000 remaining Crest ships, they looked pitifully small. Commander Mitchell approached the captain's chair. "Elena, we need to talk about the obvious." Vasquez looked at her executive officer. They had been through so much together. "You want to talk about the fact that we're going to die in the next few hours?" "Yes," Mitchell said bluntly. "We can't win this. The crash will overwhelm our defenses. They'll destroy the planet, and then they'll destroy us. We should evacuate the non-essential crew. Give them a chance. Evacuate where?" Vasquez asked quietly. "The crash will hunt down any ship that runs. And besides, if we run, the Valorian defense collapses. They're fighting because we're fighting. Our presence gives them hope." "I know," Mitchell said. "But Elena, we have young people on this ship. People with families back on Earth. They signed up for exploration, not suicide." Vasquez stood and addressed the bridge crew. "Listen up, everyone. Commander Mitchell has raised a good point. We're facing impossible odds. Anyone who wants to evacuate to the surface shelters with the Valorians, you're free to go. No one will think less of you. This is beyond what anyone should be asked to face." The bridge fell silent. Then Chen spoke up. "Captain, with respect, we're not going anywhere. We came here to help. That doesn't change just because things got hard. We're staying." Around the bridge, heads nodded in agreement. Rodriguez, Dr. Okonkwo, the helmsman, the weapons officers, everyone. Mitchell looked around and felt her eyes sting with tears. "You're all crazy," she said softly. "But I wouldn't want to be anywhere else." Vasquez felt a lump in her throat but forced it down. "All right then. We stay, we fight, and we make the bastards pay for every meter. Chen, what's our ammunition status?" "We've been manufacturing more slugs using materials from the Valorian mining operations. We're at 70% capacity for the railguns. The drones are fully stocked. It won't be enough, but we'll make it count." The Kresh fleet reached the planet. Emperor Vexilon gazed at the world below with satisfaction. The defenders were gathered in a last stand formation. They would die here, and then he would personally oversee the cleansing of this world. "Deploy the weapon," he ordered. His second-in-command hesitated. "Emperor, the biological weapon. Are you certain? The galactic laws of war prohibit such weapons. If we use it, other species may unite against us." "Other species fear us," Vexilon replied coldly. "And they will fear us more after today. The weapon will reduce this planet to a dead rock. It will take days to work. Plenty of time for the survivors to understand their mistake before they die in agony. Deploy it." A massive missile platform was brought forward. The weapon it carried was not complex. It was simply a virus engineered over centuries to be lethal to almost all known life forms. Released into a planet's atmosphere, it would spread with the wind, infecting every living thing. Death would be slow and painful. On the Indomitable, sensors detected the platform moving into launch position. Chen's face went pale. "Captain, they're preparing to deploy a biological weapon. If that thing reaches the atmosphere, everyone on the planet dies." Vasquez stared at the display. The platform was positioned at the center of the Kresh fleet, protected by thousands of ships. There was no way to reach it with conventional weapons. No way except one. She turned to Mitchell. "Sarah, I need you to take command of the evacuation. Get everyone off this ship who's willing to go. You have 10 minutes. Mitchell's eyes widened with understanding and horror. "No, Elena, no. There has to be another way." "There isn't," Vasquez said calmly. "We can't reach that platform with weapons, but we can reach it with the ship itself. Our fusion reactors can be overloaded to create a massive explosion. If we ram the Emperor's dreadnought and detonate in the center of their fleet, we take out that weapon and thousands of their ships. It's the only way." "Then I'm staying," Mitchell said firmly. "Sarah, I'm your executive officer. My place is on the bridge. We do this together or we don't do it at all." Vasquez looked at her friend and nodded. All right, but we offer the crew a choice. She opened ship-wide communications. All hands, this is the captain. We're going to perform a ramming attack on the enemy flagship. This will result in the destruction of the Indomitable. Anyone who wants to evacuate to the planet, you have 10 minutes to get to the shuttles. Anyone who stays does so by choice. It's been an honor serving with you all. Throughout the ship, crew members made their choices. Some headed to the shuttles, and no one blamed them. Others stayed at their posts. In the end, 320 people remained on the Indomitable. They were the crew who had answered the Valorian distress call, who had fought impossible odds, who had taught an entire civilization to fight back. And now they would make the ultimate sacrifice. Chen stayed at his tactical station. Course plotted, Captain. We'll hit the dreadnought amidships at maximum velocity. Engineering reports the reactors can be overloaded to critical mass on your command. Vasquez settled into her command chair one last time. She looked at the faces around her, these brave humans who had chosen to stay. Thank you, she said simply. All of you. Thank you. Then she gave the order. Helm, maximum speed. Take us in. The Indomitable's engines burned brighter than they ever had before. The massive battleship accelerated toward the Kresh fleet, directly at the Emperor's dreadnought. Alarms blared throughout the Kresh formation as they realized what was happening. Stop that ship, Vexilon screamed. All vessels, concentrate fire on the human ship. The Kresh fleet opened fire with everything they had. Energy beams struck the Indomitable from all sides. The ship's armor began to fail. Compartments decompressed. Systems exploded. Crew members died at their posts as the ship was torn apart around them. But the Indomitable did not stop. It could not be stopped. Through the fire, through the death, through the destruction, it kept coming. Vasquez gripped her armrests as the bridge shook violently. Screens exploded. Fire raged through the corridors, and still the ship flew true. We're through their defensive perimeter, Chen reported, his voice calm despite the chaos. Impact in 30 seconds. Vasquez looked at Mitchell one last time. No regrets? Mitchell smiled through bloody teeth. None. This is where we were meant to be. The Indomitable struck the Eternal Throne at tremendous velocity. The impact was devastating. The battleship's armored nose punched through the dreadnought's hull, penetrating deep into its core, and in that moment, the engineering team completed their final task. They overloaded the fusion reactors past critical mass. The explosion was like a newborn star. The Indomitable and the Eternal Throne vaporized instantly. The blast wave spread outward, consuming everything in its path. Kresh ships by the thousands were caught in the explosion, their shields useless against such concentrated energy. The Emperor's flagship, the weapon platform, and 4,000 surrounding vessels were erased from existence in a flash of brilliant light. On Valorian Prime, millions watched as the sky lit up like day. In the command center, Princess Talia watched the sensor displays go blank as the electromagnetic pulse from the explosion temporarily knocked out systems. When they came back online, a quarter of the Kresh fleet was simply gone. And floating in the debris field were escape pods. Not many, but some. 87 pods to be exact, each containing crew members from the Indomitable, who had been blown clear by the explosion in the final seconds. Captain Vasquez was among them, barely alive but alive. The Kresh fleet, shocked and leaderless with their Emperor dead, began to pull back. They had lost their commander, their flagship, and the will to fight. The battle was not over, but its outcome had changed. And then, at the edge of the system, new sensor contacts appeared. 4 ships dropped out of FTL, their designs unmistakable. Earth's reinforcements had arrived early, pushed by crews who had driven their engines beyond safe limits when they heard about the battle. Admiral Marcus Chen, father of Lieutenant James Chen, saw the debris field where the Indomitable had been. He saw the damaged Kresh fleet. He saw what humanity had sacrificed. His orders were simple and cold. All Kresh vessels have 1 hour to withdraw from this system. After that, we show no mercy. The age of the Dominion is over. The 4 Earth ships hung in space like angels of vengeance. They were larger than the original Indomitable, built with 3 additional years of advancement in human technology. The flagship was the Yuan's Defiance, a dreadnought-class vessel commanded by Admiral Marcus Chen. Beside it were 2 more battleships, the Relentless and the Unyielding, and a fleet carrier named the Valiant that held within its bays 200 combat craft. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the Defiance, his weathered face carved from stone as he studied the tactical displays. He was 60 years old, a career military man who had commanded ships in Earth's various conflicts before humanity reached the stars. But nothing in his experience had prepared him for what he saw now. The debris field where the Indomitable had been, the scattered Kresh fleet, the damaged Valorian ships, and somewhere in that chaos, escape pods containing survivors. Communications, he said, his voice controlled but carrying an undercurrent of rage. Broadcast to all Kresh vessels. Full translation, all known frequencies. The communications officer worked quickly. Channel open, sir. Chen took a breath, then spoke with absolute authority. Kresh Dominion Fleet, this is Admiral Marcus Chen of the United Earth Naval Service. You have entered a system under Earth's protection. You have attacked our allies. You have destroyed one of our ships. You have 1 hour to withdraw all forces from Valorian space. Any vessel remaining after that deadline will be destroyed. This is your only warning. On the remaining Kresh command ships, panic spread. Emperor Vexulan was dead. The command structure was in chaos. The junior admirals who had survived looked at each other with growing fear. They still outnumbered the human ships 20,000 to 4. But they had watched one human ship destroy thousands of theirs. What could 4 do? One admiral, a veteran named Kreshinar, made the decision. All ships withdraw. Jump to secondary coordinates. We must regroup and report to the Dominion Council. Another admiral objected. We still have the numbers. We can overwhelm them. Kreshinar turned his 3 eyes on his colleague. The Emperor is dead. Our flagship is destroyed. We have no idea what weapons these humans possess. I will not waste more Kresh lives on pride. We withdraw. Not all Kresh commanders agreed. Approximately 5,000 ships refused to retreat. They were young captains eager to prove themselves or fanatics loyal to the Emperor's memory. They formed up into attack formations and prepared to engage the human fleet. Admiral Chen watched the Kresh split their forces with cold satisfaction. Any ship that jumps away, let them go. Any ship that approaches, destroy it. All ships, weapons free, engage at will. What followed was not a battle. It was a demonstration of how far humanity had advanced in 3 years. The original Indomitable had used railguns and conventional tactics. These new ships carried weapons that had only been theoretical when the Indomitable left Earth. The Defiance fired its primary weapon for the first time in combat. It was called a Relativistic Kill Vehicle, or RKV. Essentially, it was a small unmanned drone accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed, using a combination of electromagnetic launching and ramjet propulsion. At that velocity, even a small object carried tremendous kinetic energy. The first RKV crossed the distance to the Kresh fleet in seconds. It struck a Kresh battlecruiser dead center. The impact released energy equivalent to a nuclear weapon. The battlecruiser and the 3 ships immediately around it were vaporized. The shockwave damaged dozens more. The Kresh fleet scattered, but there was nowhere to hide. The relentless and unyielding added their own fire. They used improved railguns that fired faster and hit harder than anything on the original Indomitable. They used directed energy weapons that could cut through Kresh shields. They used electronic warfare systems that jammed Kresh communications and made their targeting systems worthless. And from the Valiant came the combat drones. 200 small craft, each piloted by advanced AI and armed with weapon systems that made them individually more dangerous than most Kresh frigates. They swarmed the enemy formation like angry hornets, targeting engines and weapons, destroying ships from within their defensive perimeters. The battle lasted 4 hours. It was one-sided in a way that no battle in galactic history had ever been. The Kresh had relied on the same technology and tactics for thousands of years. Humanity had spent 3 years developing new weapons, specifically designed to counter what they had learned from the Indomitable's encounter. The result was slaughter. By the time the last Kresh ship was destroyed or driven off, Chen felt no satisfaction. Only exhaustion and grief. His son James had been on the Indomitable. He had received the crew manifest from the escape pods. James was alive, but Elena Vasquez and dozens of others were not. Good people had died because they answered a call for help. Admiral, his communications officer reported, we're receiving messages from the Valorian government. They want to thank us. They want to arrange a meeting. Tell them we'll meet after we recover our people, Chen replied. Helm, take us to those escape pods. I want every survivor brought aboard immediately. Medical teams, prepare for critical casualties. The rescue operation took hours. The escape pods were scattered across thousands of kilometers. Some had life support failing. Others had injured crew who needed immediate medical attention. But one by one, they were recovered. 87 souls out of the 320 who had stayed on the Indomitable. The survival rate was higher than anyone had expected, thanks to the Valorian rescue ships that had protected the pods during the battle's aftermath. Captain Elena Vasquez was brought aboard the Defiance on a stretcher. She was badly injured, with multiple broken bones and internal injuries, but she was conscious and alert. When they brought her to the medical bay, Admiral Chen was waiting. "Captain Vasquez," he said formally, "welcome aboard the Defiance." Vasquez tried to salute but managed only a weak gesture. "Admiral, thank you for the rescue. How many did we lose?" 233 from the Indomitable, plus 16 from the initial battle 6 weeks ago. "Captain, what you did here was remarkable. Insane but remarkable. Had to be done, sir," Vasquez said, wincing as the doctors worked on her. They were going to deploy a biological weapon. "We couldn't let that happen." Chen studied her for a moment. "My son was on your ship. James Chen, tactical officer." Vasquez's eyes widened. "He made it, sir. He's in the pod recovery area. Broken leg and some burns, but alive. He's a good officer. One of the best." Something in Chen's expression softened slightly. "He learned from the best, it seems. Rest now, Captain. We'll talk more when you've recovered." Over the following days, the Earth fleet worked with the Valorians to secure the system. The remaining Kresh fleet had fled completely, jumping out of the system to regroup somewhere in Dominion space. But Admiral Chen was not content to simply defend. He had studied the reports from the Indomitable's crew. He understood the Kresh Dominion now, and he knew that defense alone would not be enough. He met with Princess Talia and the other Valorian leaders in a conference that was broadcast across all 7 kingdoms. "The Kresh will return," he said bluntly. "They may have lost here, but they still control half the galaxy. If we wait for them to rebuild and attack again, we'll just repeat this cycle." "What do you suggest?" Talia asked. Over the past weeks, she had changed. The frightened princess who had knelt before Vasquez was gone. In her place was a leader who had helped coordinate a desperate defense and seen her people survive against impossible odds. "We take the fight to them," Chen replied. "We don't wait for the Kresh to attack. We go into their territory. We liberate the worlds they've conquered. We destroy their military infrastructure. We end the Dominion as a threat." The Valorian leaders looked at each other with a mixture of hope and fear. One of the Kryn elders spoke up. "Admiral, we are grateful for Earth's help. But our fleets are damaged. Our people are exhausted. We do not have the strength for a war of conquest." "Then we don't conquer," Chen said. "We liberate every world the Kresh control. We offer the same thing we offered you, freedom and the knowledge to defend it. We don't build an empire. We don't replace the Kresh with human rule. We simply break the chains and let people choose their own path." It was a radical idea. Galactic civilization had always been about one empire replacing another, one dominant power ruling until another rose to challenge it. The concept of liberating worlds without controlling them was almost incomprehensible. But Talia understood. She had seen how the humans operated. They taught rather than commanded. They advised rather than ordered. "We will join you," she said firmly. "The Elenith Kingdom pledges its remaining ships to this campaign. It is time the galaxy learned that tyranny will no longer be tolerated." One by one, the other kingdoms agreed. The Valorian Confederacy, rebuilt by human knowledge and strengthened by desperation, would fight alongside Earth not for conquest but for liberation. The campaign that followed became known in galactic history as the Liberation War. It lasted 2 years. Admiral Chen led a combined fleet of Earth and Valorian ships deep into Kresh territory. They moved from system to system, offering enslaved species a choice: freedom or continued oppression. Most chose freedom. The Kresh had ruled through fear and military might, but they had never earned loyalty. When the combined fleet arrived offering an alternative, populations rose up against their Kresh overlords. The Dominion tried to respond, but they were fighting a different kind of war now. They were not facing rigid battle formations and predictable tactics. They were facing insurgencies, guerrilla campaigns, and a military force that adapted to every situation. Captain Vasquez recovered from her injuries and returned to duty, commanding a new vessel also named Indomitable. It was built by combined Earth and Valorian engineering, incorporating technologies from both civilizations. She insisted that half her crew be Valorian volunteers. The mixing of human and alien crew members became standard practice across the fleet. Lieutenant James Chen was promoted to commander and given his own ship, a fast cruiser called the Perseverance. He continued teaching Valorian officers, spreading the doctrine of flexible tactics and asymmetric warfare. His father watched with quiet pride as his son became one of the most respected commanders in the combined fleet. The Kresh Dominion fractured under the pressure. Without their emperor and facing losses on dozens of fronts, the various Kresh noble families began fighting among themselves for control. Some tried to negotiate peace. Others launched desperate counterattacks. But the momentum had shifted irreversibly. The turning point came at the Battle of Kresh Prime, the Dominion homeworld. Admiral Chen brought the full combined fleet to the heart of enemy territory. They expected massive resistance, perhaps the bloodiest battle of the war. Instead, they found a world in chaos. The Kresh population itself had risen in revolt against the noble families who had led them to ruin. When the fleet arrived, the common Kresh people welcomed them as liberators from their own leadership. It was a lesson the galaxy would not forget. Even the conquerors had been oppressed by their own system. The rigid caste structures, the hereditary rule, the stagnation of thought and innovation had weakened even the mighty Dominion from within. Admiral Chen stood on the Defiance's bridge, looking at Kresh Prime on the view screen. "Broadcast to the planet," he ordered. "Tell them Earth offers the same deal we've offered everyone else: freedom, knowledge, and the right to self-determination. What they do with their future is their choice, not ours." The war ended not with a grand battle but with a whimper. The last Kresh military forces surrendered 3 months after their homeworld fell. The Dominion that had terrorized half the galaxy for centuries was gone, broken not by conquest but by the realization that their way of life was unsustainable. 5 years passed. The galaxy transformed in ways that would have seemed impossible during the dark days of the siege of Valorian Prime. The rigid caste systems began to crumble. Species that had been enemies for millennia began talking and trading. Knowledge that had been hoarded by noble families was shared freely. Technology that had been stagnant for eons began advancing again as millions of new minds were allowed to contribute. Earth did not become an empire, despite the opportunities. Instead, the Terran Commonwealth formed as a voluntary alliance. Any species, any world could join if they agreed to basic principles: freedom for their people, education for all, and peaceful cooperation with neighbors. Dozens of species joined, not out of fear but out of genuine desire to be part of something new. The Valorian Confederacy became one of the founding members. Princess Talia, now Queen Talia after her father's death during the siege, worked tirelessly to transform her kingdoms. The caste system was not abolished overnight, but it was gradually reformed. Commoners could now receive full education. They could serve in government, in military command, in any role their abilities qualified them for. The change was difficult and met resistance from conservative nobles, but the memory of how close they had come to extinction kept pushing them forward. On the 5th anniversary of the Battle of Valorian Prime, a ceremony was held on the planet's surface. A monument was unveiled in the capital city, visible from orbit. It was a statue carved from crystalline stone by Alanith artisans, showing the indomitable ramming the eternal throne. Around the base, inscriptions were carved in every language of the Commonwealth. Here stood humanity, outnumbered, outgunned, but never outmatched. They came when we called. They stayed when we needed them. They taught us that freedom is not given by birth, but earned through courage. They showed us that the measure of a civilization is not its power, but what it does with that power. We were 7 kingdoms pleading for salvation. They made us one people choosing our own destiny. Captain Vasquez attended the ceremony, standing with her crew. She was 47 now, with gray streaking her black hair and new scars to add to the old ones. Beside her stood Commander Chen, now a captain himself, and his father Admiral Chen, who had retired from active duty but remained an advisor to the Commonwealth. Queen Talia approached them, her feathers now showing traces of age. "Captain Vasquez, thank you for coming. Your presence honors us." Vasquez smiled. "Wouldn't miss it, Your Majesty. Though I think we should thank you. You and your people did the hard work. We just gave you a push. A push that saved billions of lives," Talia replied. She looked at the monument. at the representation of that desperate moment when a human ship had sacrificed everything to protect a world not their own. Tell me, Captain, do you ever regret answering our distress call? Do you ever think about what your life might have been if you had just continued your exploration mission? Vasquez was quiet for a moment, considering the question seriously. Then she shook her head. No regrets. We lost good people. We faced death more times than I can count. But we also changed the galaxy. We proved that different species could work together. We showed that tyranny could be defeated. And we made friends across the stars. That's worth any price. Young Valorians and humans ran past them, playing together without any awareness of how remarkable their friendship was. Children who would grow up in a galaxy where species cooperation was normal, where knowledge was shared, where opportunity was not determined by birth but by ability. Admiral Chen watched the children and smiled. You know what I think the real victory was? Not the battles we won or the dominion we defeated. It was this, showing the galaxy that there was another way. For thousands of years, civilizations rose and fell. Empires conquered and were conquered, but nothing fundamentally changed. We changed it. Not by force, but by example. As the sun set on Valorian Prime, casting the monument in golden light, the ceremony concluded with a presentation. A young Alanith, barely old enough to be considered an adult, approached the podium. She was a commoner, someone who 5 years ago would never have been allowed to speak at an official event. Now she stood before queens and admirals without fear. My name is Lyra, she said, her voice carrying across the crowd. 5 years ago, I was a servant in the household of a noble family. I was taught to clean and cook and nothing more. When the humans came, they told me I could be more. They taught me mathematics and engineering. Today I work on the design team for the new generation of Commonwealth starships. She paused, looking at the assembled crowd. The humans gave us weapons and tactics, yes. But more importantly, they gave us hope. They taught us that we were not helpless, that we could shape our own future. Every child in the Commonwealth today, whether human or Alanith or Kryn or any other species, grows up knowing they can be whatever they choose. That is the real gift humanity brought to the stars. The crowd erupted in applause, species of every kind joining together in appreciation. Vasquez felt tears in her eyes and did not try to hide them. This was why they had answered that distress call. This was why 233 brave souls had died aboard the Indomitable. Not for conquest or glory, but for this moment. For the knowledge that they had made the universe a better place. Later that evening, Vasquez stood at the observation deck of the new Indomitable, looking out at the stars. Commander Rodriguez, now a lieutenant commander, and her executive officer joined her. What are you thinking about, Captain? Rodriguez asked. I'm thinking about that distress call we picked up 6 years ago, Vasquez replied. We had no idea what we were getting into. One encrypted signal and it changed everything. Makes you wonder what else is out there waiting to be discovered. Rodriguez smiled. The Commonwealth is organizing a new deep space exploration mission. 5 ships, mixed crews heading to regions we've never mapped. They're asking for experienced captains. Vasquez turned to look at her. Are you suggesting something, Lieutenant Commander? I'm saying that maybe it's time for another Indomitable to go see what's out there. And maybe it's time to bring a few Valorian and Kresh crew members along to share the experience. Vasquez looked back at the stars, feeling that old pull of exploration and discovery. The galaxy was vast and they had barely scratched the surface. There were more species out there, more civilizations, perhaps more calls for help that would need answering. You know what, Rodriguez? I think you're right. Let's go see what else is out there. But this time we won't be going alone. 10 years after the Battle of Valorian Prime, the first joint Commonwealth deep space exploration mission launched. 5 ships, each with crews drawn from a dozen different species, headed toward the unknown regions of the galaxy. They carried with them the lessons learned from that desperate battle. That cooperation was stronger than domination. That knowledge shared was more powerful than knowledge hoarded. And that when someone cried out for help in the darkness, there should always be someone willing to answer. The Indomitable led the way, Captain Elena Vasquez in command, with Queen Talia's daughter serving as cultural liaison, and a young Kresh engineer named Volkar, working in the engine room alongside humans and Valorians. They were explorers, not conquerors, teachers, not rulers, representatives of a new age and galactic civilization. Behind them, the Commonwealth continued to grow and evolve. Trade flourished between worlds. Universities opened where beings from dozens of species studied together. The first Interspecies Academy graduated its inaugural class, young people ready to serve in the Commonwealth Fleet, or diplomatic corps, or scientific institutions. And in the center of Valorian Prime, the monument stood as a reminder of where it all began. A single ship answering a desperate call, 800 humans who believed that helping others was worth any risk. And 7 kingdoms that learned they were stronger together than they had ever been alone. The age of empires was over. The age of cooperation had begun, and somewhere in the vast darkness of space, the exploration ships of the Commonwealth flew onward, ready to extend a hand of friendship to anyone who needed it. When Earth's battleship arrived, kingdoms had pleaded for salvation. But in saving them, humanity had saved itself, proving that the best of human nature, compassion and courage and the willingness to sacrifice for others, was exactly what the galaxy needed. The story of the Indomitable became legend, told to children of every species. And the lesson it taught echoed through the centuries, that the true measure of civilization was not how powerful its weapons were, but how willingly it extended help to those in need. That was humanity's gift to the stars, not conquest but compassion, not domination but dignity, not empire but equality, and the galaxy was better for it.